So the subject for today is analytics, content analytics. So well, I've been introduced before. So just then you see my another picture, and you've got my email address, so you can reach out to me whenever you want and write to me directly. As for Antidot, we are an independent software vendor specialized in information access. We are focusing our energy in developing highly efficient machine learning based algorithms for content enrichment, text analytics, and semantic search. We have got more than 150 customers, mostly in the US and in Europe. And we operate in very diverse sectors, not only tech doc, but as well on legal content, medical content, and with a bunch of customers, mostly in SaaS. And we try to solve the mission critical business requirements around information access. And indeed, we do believe that providing access to the right product information at the right time is critical to succeed in competitive markets. And the ability to solve a problem quickly is essential to your customer loyalty. So this is why we have invented Fluid Topics. This is a turnkey platform, a software for reinventing the way people access, search, read, navigate, interact, and engage with content, and particularly with product-related technical information. So with Fluid Topics, we want to help enterprises provide a better product experience and a more efficient customer support. So if you attend this presentation, there is a huge chance that your company creates and sells sophisticated products or services. And those require knowledge to be installed, configured, used, supported, maintained, and so forth. So this knowledge is essential and part of the whole product experience. And this is why you invest in tools for authoring and managing tech content. And you have a team of seasoned technical writers, subject matter experts involved in creating that content. So once it's created, you have to deliver that content. And before, years ago, you used to do that in a paper-based form, large books, binders, libraries that you were shipping, and people developed work a bit around that. The situation has evolved, and now we see two trends. First, there are more and more data sources involved and delivering information needed to support customers. Not only tech doc, but you have now wikis, knowledge bases, maybe catalog of spare parts in industry, articles from subject matter experts, and so forth. And then that information is published, mostly in a static way, in the form of PDF and HTML pages. And that makes it very difficult and costly, not only for you to publish and organize that content, but also for users to search and navigate. So basically, it's not digital transformation, but mostly dematerialization. So you got rid of paper, and you have transferred the cost of printing to the end user. But that's another story. Today, we're going to focus on two questions, the what and the why. How do you know you're doing things right? Do you know if people read your content, what they read, how many times they spend on it, overall, in a book, on a section, on a topic? Do you know why? Do you know why they are coming to you, why they are consulting your documentation? What are the subjects of interest? Why did they come to the doc? By product, by version, by user profile. Can you correlate the use of your content with the other touch points at pre-sales or at customer support moments? Can you better help support agents assist your customers by showing the path used so far by that user, what they read before opening a ticket or reaching out to customer support? So there are tons of questions about understanding how people use your content and what they do with it. And to introduce the subject about measurement, there are two sayings. One that says, well-known, that says, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. But if you can't measure it, then it doesn't even exist because you can't show that it's there. So measuring is critical. And if you don't, so for you as tech writer, your job, your quality of life in your company depends on your capability to demonstrate the return on investment and the value brought by the tech doc. Whether or not you are convinced of the necessity of tech doc does not matter, as long as you cannot prove it. Maybe you believe in tech doc, you know it's important, but if you cannot show the value it creates in your company, then it's going to be very difficult for you to convince internally to gain more money, more resources, to create more content, and do that in a better way. So this is why you have to deliver measures, and good ones. You need to show numbers. You need to show the value you create. So the way we measure the consumption of content is intrinsically bound to the delivery method. And that's very important to understand that. If you ship paper-based manual, what you measure is the printed numbers the number of printed books, of shipped books, which is basically the same as the number of product that you've sold. So okay, that's the only thing you can measure. The number of binders of books that you paper-based that you put in the box and that you ship with the product. If you generate PDFs, what you measure are downloads, not real use, which means what is read, how many times, and so forth. Only the download of the PDF, but that PDF may have been opened only once, maybe 0, maybe 10 times a week. Maybe that PDF has been shared inside a company and is used by 20 people. You don't even know. So downloads and readings are not related at all. It's very difficult to derive some information from those downloads numbers, and that's a huge bias. If you look at HTML pages, if you generate static HTML pages, okay, that's a huge improvement compared to PDFs. Still, we've seen that it fails to deliver the promise of contextual and personalized information. Accessibility is still complex, but it's better. You've got to find a better way to measure consumption and access to that content. However, here we've got a problem, is that the tools that we're using to measure HTML pages consumptions are not the right tools. They are tools made for the web. What we're going to look at right now. And they deliver numbers that are very, very difficult to make sense of, and that we cannot, and those numbers, we struggle to derive value from. So let's dig a little bit into that biases and limitation of web analytics, because basically that's what we all use today. So how does that work? To really understand how it works, we need, and why we need to change the delivery, let's look at how analytics is done today. So first, you generate that content, a little bit of PDFs, static HTML pages, okay, coming from one or multiple silos. You generate that and you upload that on a website, the delivery layer. And then people come to that website, read the pages, download a few PDFs. And when they do that, your web server generates logs, access logs. And there are tools that you can use for batch processing those logs and then generate reports. Or you can put a tracker inside your web page. And then each time someone accesses a page, that tracker silently generates a call to the external platform, such as Google Analytics. And then you can go to your Google Analytics website, for example, and check the analytics. So basically, whether you use one method or the other doesn't matter, because both of them are wrong. Both of them are not at all adapted to our needs. So why? First, because we don't track content usage, we track downloads. We still track downloads. We track page loads, downloads, but not readings. And as well, what is tracked depends on the structure of your content. And the structure of your content has an impact on what is measured. Say if you generate, for example, if you look at that screenshot, in this situation, there is one HTML page per topic. So one topic generates one HTML page. And the smaller the topic, the more pages that you have. So you operate at a very fine-grained level that generates a lot of logs and very, very blurry data. So, okay, knowing that someone went to that page generates one log, and then they click on next page, generates another log entry, and got tons of log entries like that. And the problem is that the size of the content is so small that it's very difficult to derive value from that. On the other hand, if you generate long HTML pages, like one HTML page aggregates several topics at a section level or at a chapter level, you tend to get closer to the PDF bias, which means that you don't know what people read inside that HTML page. That HTML page is like 200 lines long. You don't know if they read everything on that, what part they read, only the beginning, only the end, and how long they spend on the page. So because you've just tracked the tracker or the log entries, just track the download of the page. So basically, at this point, we see that using a web analytics tool doesn't tell you if the page is read or not, and that the structure of the content has a huge impact on the logs that are generated and how you can analyze and understand those logs. Second limitation of web analytics tools is that they have been designed for websites, which means for marketing purpose. The metrics that they give are mostly session, users, pages, flows, duration, bounces, campaign performance. If you take Google Analytics, you're not sure that campaign performance makes sense when it's about tech content, devices, countries, languages. So it's very technical information, in fact. So because those tools were created for websites, corporate websites, marketing websites, the problem is that because those tools are neat, are very nice, generate very nice pages with drawings and so forth, and because that's the only thing we have and the only tools that we know, we think it's okay, but it's not. In fact, it's not creating value. And to show you why it's not creating value and where the problem is, I'm going to take a real example. So this is Google Analytics installed on our own fluidtopics.com website. And that's okay because that's a marketing website presenting the product, and we have few tens of pages. The name of the pages is pretty obvious. So it's quite simple to look at those numbers and understand what happens on the website. But now imagine that instead of having few tens of pages like that, you've got thousands or tens of thousands of topics, pages corresponding to topics. And you've got the same numbers, and you say you've got the title of the topics as the title of the page. And you see the label here in that example. You see Fluid Topics version 3 release note, table of data, metadata study, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that I don't have only tens of lines. I have thousands of lines like that. And just making sense of that is very, very difficult. And if you take representations like this flow between the flow path between the pages by users, still that's okay. The same for the same website. That's okay as well because we have few tens of pages, and we see that people first arrive on the home page, then go to try it, about us, blah blah. But the same way, that doesn't apply if you have generated if you have tens of thousands of HTML pages corresponding to your topics or your different parts of your content, because that would be having thousands of lines like that, and the content, the navigation would be too scattered between the different types of users that you couldn't get anything out of that. So we see that the tools that are proposed by those web analytics are not suited to technical content. That's the same at the book level. Okay, so this is the same applied if I don't work at the topic level, but I tend to aggregate the topic at the book level. So at the map level, I can tell you which books are read. So you see this here, the numbers. You can say that the FS configuration has been read 226 times last month. But you see here that we have twice the same line at the beginning, because in fact, we have two different versions of the product. So you see it's very, very difficult to understand because the metadata does not appear in this sort of analytics. And basically, you've got raw numbers. Okay, so the same as with topics, but even at the book level, same thing, you've got numbers. And it's very difficult to make sense of those numbers. Are they good? Are they bad? Is that better than the months before? Is that a huge part of the readings? How does that compare to other books? Is it growing? Is it trendy? Is it not? Do people like it? So you see that just loose numbers like that on a web page are very, very difficult to understand and to analyze on the long term. So basically, as a conclusion, I would say that counting file or page downloads at the web server level is totally biased. We need to track differently. We need to track events that match real users' behavior and content consumptions. As well, raw numbers are meaningless. We need more perspective to get a better understanding. And we need context as well to give meaning to those numbers so that we can interpret the numbers. So that's where we are. So we don't analyze, we don't make good measurement of content consumption, and we don't render that well, especially if we use web analytic tools. So, and I think that we are now at an inflection point. There is a new way of delivering content, which is called dynamic delivery, which you may have heard of. And that's a real game changer, not only because it's changing the way, it's bringing a new way for people to, a more contextual, more personalized way for people to search and read content, but as well, if done right, we can change the way we do analytics, we track usage, content usage, and we can unlock a huge potential that we'll talk about that. So by changing the way we deliver from paper to PDF to static content, thanks to dynamic content delivery, we can change the way we measure content consumption and users' behavior. So, and doing that is highly important because that's a unique opportunity to reinvent the way we do things and to generate fact-based metrics that are fueling fact-based decision engines. You know, more and more companies try to do data analytics stuff and the data-driven company, and they require that every department inside the company generates numbers and metrics that can feed the algorithms for making better decisions. So changing the way we do analytics is the opportunity to be part of that and to provide and feed those decision engines with numbers coming from content consumption. So I don't know if you've heard about dynamic delivery and if you're quite aware about that, and to introduce, I'm going to do that through Fluid Topics, which is our dynamic delivery solution. And we have 4 pillars. And as you can see, the 4th pillar of Fluid Topics is the analytics, the measurement, and the analytics. But to understand why we do that differently, it can be done differently, I'm going to explain you before what we do in the first 3 pillars. First, we don't only take index and take into account TechDoc. It's any content that matters. We can fetch and combine any content from any silo related to product support. And we take the content, whether it's structured, unstructured, from TechDoc, wikis, knowledge bases, and we can combine and aggregate that into a unified knowledge hub. And we can create links between the content, align metadata, and make that a very semanticized and rich set of information. And then once we have aggregated and combined that content, we make it available through APIs. We provide a turnkey portal for accessing that content. We provide APIs as well, so that you can feed existing apps, portals, help desk tool with this content, ready-to-use content. And you can as well plug modern new ways to new devices like chatbots, heads-up display, or inline help through those APIs. Well, it's a secure platform, but the second point that I want to insist on is that with FluidTopics, we have reinvented the way people search and navigate the content. At the core of this find and view pillar, we have our semantic search engine that supports synonym, Favourus. We provide a facets for filtering. We automatically extract metadata from content, generate aligned metadata, and provide them as filters. Type ahead suggestions, self-learning spell checker, everything you like from a modern search engine. But as well, we have, and that's one of the last points, we have reinvented the way people read the content online. And that's a key point for better measuring what people do with content. We have an embedded reader that is streaming the content and measuring content use, and that's a key part of FluidTopics. And the third pillar, and I'll be back to that, and the third pillar is craft and share. It's about having an interaction engagement layer on top of the search and reading experience so that people can bookmark, create alerts, annotate content, create their own books, share with others what they do. So it's all about how to interact with content that has been lost by switching from paper to PDFs. And the fourth pillar, as I said, is about measuring and analyzing. So we do track everything that people do. And the way we do that is very, very unique. And that's what we needed to do when we figured out that the way measuring content download was useless and creating a huge bias. So what we've done is that we have invented it FluidTopics, an embedded reader that's streaming the content. So when people, and we don't measure what people at the server level, but we track, we generate events at the UI level. So when people stream the content, we generate events in real time when they enter a keyword search, and then when they start reading, we measure how long each paragraph is displayed on the screen. So as you can see, we don't care about whether or not something is downloaded from the server, but we track and we measure what is displayed on the screen, at what position, and how long it's done, how long it's displayed on the screen. So what we do, we've turned FluidTopics into an event generation engine, and we store all those events in real time in a very, very high performance dedicated backend with a data mining engine on top of that to generate those insights and those new analytics that I'm going to talk about. So it's not about putting the classical old-fashioned web analytics tools with trackers on the web page and measuring downloads. Now it's about measuring exact content consumption. And the second point is that we needed to, so that's what we've done. First, we needed to change the way we track, we generate events, the way we process the content, not in batch mode, but in real-time mode with modern big data technologies. And the third point is we needed as well to change the rendering of those analytics. And just to give you an idea of what we mean by changing the way we render, changing the rendering of the analytics, I'd like to give you, to do that through some screenshots and mockups. So remember, I showed you numbers on red books with lines and just numbers. Imagine that now with this new ways of tracking and storing and processing metrics, we can do much better things, like, for example, generating data with data visualizations. Like, imagine that is your library, and here we can display what are the most read books in a more visual way. You can as well organize that by clusters. So you can see based on your documentation type, we put colors. So you see in blue, that's fluid topics content. In yellow, we've got this AFS, which is our search technology content. Back office is in orange. So you can organize the layout according to content metadata, and you can use any metadata that's in your content to cluster to cluster the elements dynamically. And if you click, for example, if you see a book, say, okay, oh, I've got this fluid topics integration guide, which is definitely something that has been mostly read today. If you click on that, so this is one way of rendering. We are testing multiple ways of rendering those metrics. There are tons of them like that to drill down. So these are tree maps and more wheel maps like that. And so you can render in a better way, in a more understandable way, the entire library usage. And you can as well drill down. For example, if you want to understand how a book is read, it's not about giving you scattered numbers about topics or sections, but it's about taking those numbers and displaying that, for example, with heat maps. It's like, in front of the table of content, we can display what are the parts, the sections or the chapters that are the most read. And the colors are used to represent other dimensions like number of likes or number of bookmarks. So if people bookmark a lot, more or less parts of your book or the time they spent on the book. So you see, you can represent different information on the same visualization. And you can, the same way as you were used to click to open the table of content and read the content, you can do the same here. You can open a section and have the detailed number by topic or subsection. And then you understand really where people spend time in your book and not only numbers that are thrown like that in the table in long lists. So now you can make sense, and now you know what are the interesting parts of your book and where people go. And as I said, as you can see, the rendering of the numbers is not what we do is that we've stopped doing the rendering of the numbers in a dedicated back office, because to understand the numbers, you need to see the content at the same time. If you just say, if you just see these numbers, like tons of people go to personal book section, but what's inside that? You need to see the content at the same time. But maybe because the numbers are sometimes highlighted by the content itself, and you need to see the content at the same time as the numbers. So that's why we have decided to migrate the rendering, and that's how it should be done, to migrate the rendering of the analytics inside the content and within the content as well at the same time. So you see here, you're in the reader, and as a tech writer, you can just activate the rendering of the numbers inside at the same time as the content. So you've got the title of the topic here, and for that topic, you can see that you display you can embed dynamically the rendering of the analytics, like the number of reads, comments, pending feedbacks, and you can zoom, so you can access the metrics on each topic, section, and chapter like that, and you can expand and get more information, like more or less feedback, is that we're growing or not, if people liked it or not, like engagement, we compute engagement score, like time people spend on the content, or if they like it or not, or the comments they spend, or you've got pending feedback that you have to process on this content. For example, if you allow people to give feedback on content. As you can see, regardless of the numbers that are here, what is important to understand is that these numbers are much easier to analyze and understand if they are displayed at the same time as the content, with the content itself. So now, because you can correlate both, you can correlate them when reading the content. So that was the first part of what I wanted to insist on and talk about at first. It's like, as we've seen, we need to change not only the way we generate we measure the consumption of content. We should not rely anymore on server logs or tracker inside web pages because they are not measuring what people do, but only the downloads. And downloading doesn't mean that it's read. And two, we need to change as well the way we render those numbers. Flat lists are useless, needs to be done with the content in context in a better way so that you can directly grasp what people do with your content, where they go, what are the most read books, what are the most read sections, where they go, what are the keywords they use when they're, what were the searches and the keywords they use before going to that section or that chapter of that very specific book. So this can only be done if you display that with the content itself. And once you've changed this way of doing analytics, and that's the second part of the presentation, I'd like to open up the subject and go a little beyond that and show you what value can be created once you've got that in place. So I know it's already a lot, changing, having this new way of doing analytics is for you as tech writers, being able to really understand and get unbiased information, comprehensive information, and now understand what people do with your content is huge. But that's only a beginning. And what if this way of doing analytics could not only impact you and change your life, but as well change the life of other processes and other teams inside your enterprise? What if they could rely on your content, and what if TechDoc could become instrumental in customer success and product adoption? And to talk about that, I'd like to talk about three things that can be done with this new way of doing analytics. The first one is called subject of interest. The second is about dynamic content personalization. And the third thing is about predictive and real-time customer support. Subject of interest. All with what that we've seen before, the numbers, the analytics we've seen before, done in a wrong way or in a better way, as I've shown you, by capturing and rendering metrics in context. It's just a way to render metrics on pieces of content. You've got numbers that says, okay, this book has been read that many times, that topic has been read that many times. So those are numbers on objects. But inside this object, inside that book, inside that topic, you wrote that to deal with a specific subject, okay, to solve an issue, to explain something to someone. And maybe you have 2, 3, 4 sections, topics in different books or knowledge-based articles that are dealing about the same subject. But because you have several articles, several topics, several sections, you have different objects. So you've got metrics for each of those objects. But maybe you'd like to cluster that, and maybe we're sure we'd like to cluster that, and have the numbers on the subject. Like, how do I change a toner cartridge for this printer? How do I do this? How do I install that? How do I fix this issue? And maybe the subject about fixing that issue is explained, dealt with in different knowledge-based articles, topics, and sections. So instead of generating only metrics about objects, it's about clusterizing, analyzing what's inside the content as well, and creating clusters of information that are gathering different pieces of content and put numbers on the subjects. And suddenly, you can give numbers and reports not only to you as a tech writer, but as well then you can go to product and marketing and say, okay, you know, those are the subjects people are reading about. This is what they care about. This is what they are worried about. This is what they struggle with the product. They are reading about how to change that, how to fix that, how to do this. So maybe we should fix the product. Maybe we could change the UI. Maybe we could do something to fix that. Because even though we explain it well in the TechDoc, so we solve afterward the problem, the pain, but maybe we could do something before it happens by enhancing the product. And that can only be done if we provide those teams with metrics that are not at the object level, but at the subject level. So that's the idea of subject of interest as opposed to objects, metrics on objects, is deriving numbers and clusterizing those numbers together when the pieces of content deal about the same issue and the same subject. That's the idea of metrics on subject of interest. The second thing that can create a lot of value for you and your company is patterns and personalizations. It's analyzing, because we've got this database now, this fine-grained log that are very, very unbiased, because now we know exactly what people read when they search for something and so forth. We can track their path, their reading path, and know when they start researching, adding keywords, removing keywords, and so forth. So we can analyze that with advanced algorithms, with data mining solutions, with the data mining platform that we've built. We can derive and compute patterns, and automatically, for example, create categories of users. So you don't have to say that sort of user is more novice or expert, that he has this type of product, or this sort of users, end user, field maintenance operator, and so forth. Instead of declaring that can be computed automatically. After some time, you gather enough elements, enough track records, enough logs, and you can start clusterizing people based on the content consumption. Which means, and those categories may be something, the algorithms can compute categories that you would not imagine. And once you have categorized people like that, you can not only correlate categories of people with subject of interest, but as well, you can correlate categories of people with reading books they go to, sections they read, and so forth, which means that then you can dynamically adapt the search results and the readings you promote to them based on this profile. So basically, by analyzing what people do, you can slowly increase the search and reading experience by being more accurate and more contextual to their needs. And that's something you can only do if you've got this data mining capability in place. And as you see, it's quite transforming as well. That's something we'll experience every day, what I described here. That's what you have when you go now to the Google or Bing. They track what your searches, your clicks, and as you know, now if you run a search, there are no and if you ask someone beside you to run the same search on Google, you will have two different result pages. So you cannot just say to someone, go to Google, type this, and look at the third result. He won't have the same third result on the first page as you have, because more and more the search results pages are personalized based on your content consumption and the analysis of your past usage of Google. So that's the same that we need to do with TechDoc. We need to understand clearly what people do, analyze their need, their concerns, their expertise level, and so forth, the product they have, cross that with the product they have, or maybe we can derive the product they have based on the content they read, and slowly, automatically adapt the content we provide to them, the content we push to them based on that. And the third thing we can do with a modern analytics platform is real-time support. So we all have experience that you have an issue with your computer or your whatever, and you call customer support, and it's like customer support for them is they ask you, did you turn it off? Did you plug it? So, you go through this long list of questions, and you are furious because you are so annoyed because you've spent 1 hour, 2 hours reading the doc, going to the forums, asking people, and then finally, because you don't want to do that and it's going to be terrible, you go to the customer support, you open a ticket, you call them, and you have to go through all this process where you have to explain that, yes, you've plugged your computer, yes, you turned it on, and so forth. And that's pretty annoying. So that's not a good customer experience. So now imagine that instead of that, because you can track that people have read content before. When they call customer support, when they open a ticket, you could have that information in real time from the analytics platform that this customer has spent that number of time, that number of hours, minutes reading content. This is the keyword he used. This is the searches is done. This is the books he read rapidly. And so then you know as a support agent that maybe you can avoid asking stupid questions and go directly to, okay, obviously ask directly the right questions because this guy is quite an advanced user. Conversely, if someone opens a ticket and you can see that he hasn't been to the TechDoc before, maybe you can start with the first question. So you see that based on tracking what people do with content, you can deliver a more subtle customer support experience and help them and take them from where they stop searching and be more efficient. And when you give them advice and say maybe you can check that part of the doc because you know they haven't been there. You see where they've been. You see where they haven't checked. You can say, did you check that part of the doc? You know as well if you can check as well later if they have done so and help them in a more efficient way. So so that you see that's really can be a really game changer for customer support. Not mentioning what is called predictive customer support. So now, if you analyze content consumption, and if you know when people end up opening a ticket, and you've got this analysis that you can analyze that with algorithms, later on, when someone comes to the website, you check the website, runs a search, starts reading content. In real time, you can detect that there is a huge chance that this guy will ask for customer support because 80% of the people that have done so didn't find the information they needed and ended up opening a ticket. So basically, maybe you can reach out to that guy before because you know that there's a huge chance he will do so. So maybe that's the right time to have this pop-up window coming and say, hey, can we help you? You know, there's tons of websites now you can embed a sort of a live chat. And the problem is that most of the time, the live chat appears automatically right at the beginning or after 30 seconds. And you don't want to be bothered. You're here to check the TechDoc. You don't want to have someone, hey, do you want my help? Do you want my help? But if that pop-up comes at the right time, because you know for sure or 80% chance that this guy starts being lost, he's been spending too much time looking for some information, then you can do that in the right way and push the right information to him and start talking to him at the right time. So as a conclusion, I would say that TechDoc delivery done right, which means that not static content, but dynamic content, not doing analytics based on server logs, but by generating real unbiased events is a sensor. It's a direct connection to your user's brain. And then, thanks to that, thanks to this information you capture, then TechDocs becomes a generator of critical information that has a huge value and that can feed a lot of different teams inside your company, product, marketing, customer support. And now you can play a more strategic role with tech content. Because we all know that tech content is important to companies, but what we need to do is have the right tools to deliver that promise. Thank you.